Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of DealBox Daily. We're glad that you joined us today for episode 23 of our podcast series. My name is John Nance. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at DealBox, and I am joined by some of our fantastic clients, business by the name of Impact Naturals on today's episode. With us, we have Vassili Kotlov and Martin Bettoni of Impact Naturals. Gentlemen, say hello.
Thank you for introduction, John. Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
It's nice to see you guys. Thanks for making the time with us today. We're thrilled to have you. So as a little bit of a background for our audience, Impact Naturals is a recent listing on the DealBox marketplace. So following today's episode, please head on over to dlbx.io and check out the business and the offering that's in place. Really exciting company in a forward-thinking space. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about CBD and health and wellness from the experts over at Impact Naturals. So, gentlemen, before we get into some of the actual information behind the business, the company's vision and business model, I'm sure our audience would love it if you shared a little bit about your story with us. What was life like for you guys before Impact Naturals, and how did that maybe segue into the creation of the company to start?
Sure, sounds good. So, myself, as well as two other, initial founders, all are coming from pharmaceutical industry with at least 20 years or more of experience. And our team has covered pretty much every aspect of product development, manufacturing, marketing, science, clinical data development, pretty much the whole cycle. And most of the conditions or diseases that we had the chance to work on were, so-called chronic conditions. So basically conditions that, they last for a long time, they're not curable. And, as an example, this could be irritable bowel syndrome that millions and millions of Americans have, or chronic pain. And what happens, or anxiety, and what happens in all of those conditions, that at least 30%, it's almost like a rule of thumb, 30% of people that have those conditions sooner or later fail conventional treatments, and they will end up actively seeking for other ways to cope with their life. It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating, and that's kind of has been always on our minds. And when we've learned about the power of endocannabinoid system, we got really excited. I mean, it's like tremendous. Because if you think about it, the key function of endocannabinoid system is to actually prevention and protection of our body from stress, from injury, and so it is very hard to find something that is made by nature, which is in our case is a plant, that can be mapped specifically to human physiology and human systems and targets. And it's very exciting as a scientist when you uncover something like that with such a huge potential for such large population of people. And so that's kind of how we started the company, just fascinated by the science. In general, our whole team is, we value curiosity and passion. That's kind of like a key secret components, behind the success in our minds. And so we jumped on it and spent literally 2 years of just doing research around, human physiology. How much do we know about the science? And then quickly translated this into actual product development. And the product development and formulation development in this space is not trivial, and it needs to be done better. And maybe just to kind of jump on the other side of our management team, we have a very strong other side of the business, well, other part of the team of the Impact Naturals that comes from actual commercialization, and marketing and advertising. And this is where Martin jumps in, and he can introduce himself, as well as some other members of our team. We have an extensive and actually even global experience in bringing products to market in the consumer products group category. We just feel very excited and very confident around our ability to create products that are differentiated, that are unique, that are different, that are truly, kind of first in class, if not first in market, but first in class. We're creating new categories, and that's kind of, what excites us. And I'll let Martin Bitoni maybe quickly introduce himself and our commercial team.
Yep. Thanks, Vas. That's a very nice introduction. As much experience as Vassili and our chief medical officer have in the pharmaceutical space is the same as Vassili set up on our marketing and revenue sides. For me specifically, that's an over 20-year career spent in advertising and specifically in ad tech. And along the way, building and exiting some very successful companies in that space. And for the case of our CMO, some very, very large agency experience with enormous global customers. Again, both of us experience building companies and having those companies introduce products into a new market and how to talk about them, and most importantly, how to monetize them. So when the opportunity came up for Vassili and I to work together specifically on impact, there was just a ton of alignment between, things like the timing, when it was happening, and also what we were trying to accomplish and the needs of the organization based on what we were trying to accomplish. You need, strong research and development, strong science, strong products. We also need strong advertising, marketing, and obviously revenue chops as well.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's fascinating. It's always a gigantic pleasure here at DealBox when we work with clients that have thought through all of these elements of the business and its inception. Like Vassili, you were mentioning 2 years of research and development before even starting really with the business and its things that it was going forward to achieve, and setting up of all of these other departments inside such an early stage business with all of that background work that you guys have done to get the company in a position to really go to market from the beginning of its inception, if you will. So it's fascinating to see how much thought and effort has really gone into the structuring of that. And it's been a pleasure working alongside you guys with this. So talk to us a little bit about, what you would say the mission statement of Impact Naturals is. Vassili, you were telling us a little bit about preventative medicine and how most of the pharmaceutical industry is designed to treat illnesses and not really prevent them. So we heard a little bit about that, but tell us a little bit more about the mission statement in Impact Naturals. What would you say that looks like?
Yeah, thank you, John. That's kind of, again, goes back to, I think, unique position that cannabis-based approach brings by being very safe and with years and years of experience, enthusiastic, experience and citizen science based approach. We know it's fairly safe, and because it's connected to so many systems in our body, there is a chance to, help people to cope and prevent some of those chronic conditions, or maybe help with symptoms of those chronic conditions. And that's, it's that impact on the society is tremendous in terms of people everyday life, and being able to be with going to work or be with their families. It is tremendous, and it's really motivational for us. And it's something that is kind of like ingrained in our minds. We can't wait to generate more data and explain how the cannabinoid system works, as well as how our products help the endocannabinoid system that our bodies have to work better. And that's the kind of the protection and prevention function comes in. And we envision ourselves being a company that really charters probably hopefully a new course, because traditionally you have, on one hand, you have the traditional pharmaceutical approach that relies on 10 years, 5 to 10 years of research and development and clinical trials, and it's absolutely necessary, and it's absolutely needed for new chemical entities that we don't know anything about. But and on the other side, you have kind of more of a natural supplement space that often has citizen science, but not real science behind it, and it's unregulated, and it's free for all. And I think there needs to be a new space that is in between, that is being built and established, where cannabis will find its own unique way of creating new products and generating data. Because I think all the best companies and all the best operators in the space will have to generate data, will have to look for quality products. Quality is an extremely important component that often is overlooked, and that we pay a lot of attention, and constantly making sure that our products do what we hope they do, and that's where I think in the next few years the best companies will emerge, from this crowded kind of space. But I think it will change multiple times before it settles down.
Yeah, that's fascinating, Vassili. It's funny, as I'm listening to you give that response there, I'm thinking about two additional questions I wanted to ask, and you kind of alluded to them. So I'll go ahead and lead in with these next ones. Kind of from a micro standpoint with respect to Impact Natural's supply chain, you mentioned quality. So ironically enough, I used to own a hemp farm, as a matter of fact, up in Oregon. And so I've been very close to the cultivation of the initial starting point for CBD. And I've come to learn a lot about what goes into the proper cultivation of these plants, what the extraction processes look like, and all of those kinds of things. So from a point of quality, as you mentioned, in what feels like a saturated market, which you also brought up, tell us a little bit about what the supply chain looks like and how you go about sourcing CBD for your products and the other ingredients that go into them.
Yeah. So the supply chain, we're a virtual company at the moment, and we're paying extremely high attention to the supply chain. For example, we went, I think, through at least 5 different testing labs before we found one that we trust. Okay. And there's a lot of dissatisfaction with testing, I think, we can all agree. And one of the key components of discrepancies in testing comes from sample handling. And it's fascinating how many labs just don't do proper sample handling, and they essentially mess up the results before even starting the experiments. So we partnered with a lab that came out of UCLA, most of the scientists there came out of UCLA. They're true scientists. They're driven by science and doing proper, reproducible science. We have screened a long list of cannabis suppliers. We have a very extensive qualification process, that we go through ourselves as a team. And we're doing something that I think now you see other companies are trying to do as well, which is, we start with a high quality, broad spectrum, distillate extract. Yeah. And, early on when we enrich that broad spectrum with minor cannabinoids as well as CBD, and the goal is to produce constantly exactly the same, content of key ingredients. We cannot go and control hundreds of them, but we can control, let's say 5, and that's where kind of like this if you will, a marriage of the pharmaceutical approach where you want to go with isolated single elements and more of a holistic approach. I want to use the whole plant, comes together. This is how you can bring them together. You bring the whole plant and you bring individual components as well. And you control those in the small amount of individual key components, and those become your kind of key ingredients. So you benefit from the whole plant, as well as then you can reliably use this product for qualities of those key ingredients. And that's I think the future of this field, and that's I think more and more people will be doing this. It's kind of like if you think about it, the enrichment, or otherwise known as blending approach, is fairly widely used in other industries like food, tea, whiskey. All of those things are blended, to have constantly the same taste. Well, in our case, it's constantly the same content of the key cannabinoids. So, and then once we have the product done, we actually we conduct quality audits in compliance with the CFR regulations. So we actually have an auditor that goes through standard operating procedures, visits all the supply chain component companies, and make sure that we can actually then produce a quality product that has all the documentation and has a proven shelf life, and we can trace the whole supply chain, all of the components.
Wow. Well, I think it's safe to say that you guys have put a ton of thought into the supply chain aspect and the sourcing of the ingredients and the molecular and chemical profiles of the products. It's very exciting. Just for the audience at hand too, I took a look at the website myself. You can head on over to impact-naturals.com and take a look at the full product lineup that they have available. It's a really unique UI UX experience for y'all, super easy to use. I actually went on and purchased some products for myself this past week. So I'm looking forward to, experiencing the benefits from those things as soon as they get to the house. But thank you for that, Vassili. Martin, this one might be a good one for you, but feel free to take it any direction you want to go. Now that we've kind of spent a high level about overview around the business, I'd like to get the audience a little bit more familiar around the go-to-market strategy for the business and some of the revenue goals and types of objectives you're looking to achieve as a company from an investment standpoint. If somebody's interested in participating in helping you guys grow the business and this tremendous opportunity that's available on DealBox today. So maybe you could help our listeners better understand what the opportunity is at hand and how you're going to go about achieving those things.
Those are great questions, John. I'm actually going to segue into that by just finishing up the great setup that Vassili gave me about our supply chain. everything that Vassili talked about is related to, you know, the point where you're now ready to actually manufacture the capsules. But then, you know, you have to make the formulation, you have to make the capsules, you have to get them in bottles, you have to get them out to people. And in each step of that process, we've taken the path with the most resistance, right? We've chosen purposefully to partner with the very best folks who do each one of those steps. And the reason really goes back to what we were talking about earlier when it comes to quality. You know, we have very lofty goals. This is why it's a good segue around what we were trying to achieve revenue-wise and growth-wise. The only way we're going to achieve that is if we put out what arguably is one of, if not the very best quality products that have ever existed in this space into the market. That's kind of what we're shooting for at each step along the way. And you can imagine, you know, we've done this with purpose, and we've done this to great. What's the best way to say it? You know, sacrifice is the best way to say it. These things, these are expensive endeavors. These are the kind of endeavors that, as Vassili said, a pharmaceutical company would take if they were bringing, you know, a new product to market. We've tried to bring that methodology and practice into the cannabis or cannabinoid, endocannabinoid space. And so now that we have, or we're at the point where that's all sort of coalescing, if you will, into a market opportunity, into a commerce opportunity, where do we go from here? So we've got a number of what I'll call pokers in the fire, right? So we have digital commerce right off the bat. That's our own store. That's our products being sold directly to consumers, or being sold indirectly through some other online retail partnerships. And of course, all the marketing and targeting strategies around that effort. That's sort of like, that's one poker, right? And that's all for now, that's in the US, right? And then we have sort of a long-term vision for a retail strategy. Where are the places where it makes a lot of sense for people to be able to walk into a store, learn why these products might be a good fit for them, and then buy them right there. And so that's a multi-pronged strategy around who are those folks now, who are those folks 6 months from now, and who are those folks 2 years from now, with the hopes that, you know, that footprint will grow and grow significantly. And then, you know, I think for us, one of the most exciting areas that we are actively thinking about is what happens outside of the US, right? We believe that there's a tremendous opportunity in the UK and in the EU in a much more nascent and differently, that market has a much different focus than the American market. And their focus aligns greatly with the goals that we've set for ourselves and the types of products that we want to introduce to people. So we think, you know, beyond our retail and revenue strategies just in the US, there's a tremendous opportunity to, in a very, some would say almost too quick pace, do that in those markets as well. And then the last thing I'll kind of wrap up around here is, you know, we want to make a meaningful, and Vassili mentioned this, meaningful and lasting impact in people's lives, right? So that means that they don't just buy our products once. They buy our products because they work and they come to rely on them. And so as much as we can, we want to make sure that those customers are getting the benefits from those products on a regular basis by renewing them and by replenishing them. The best way to do that is through subscription. So we have a whole strategy around ARR, what that looks like for our consumer business. But remember, I haven't even talked about yet this idea of our business being, you know, on one side consumer facing, but on the other side, B2B facing. And how can we help other companies who may be interested in this space use our technology and our backbone to bring their products to life? And what does that ARR journey look like as well? So we kind of think that we're in a very unique space where we've got the right R&D, the right products behind us. And now we're just super excited to start realizing all of these sort of strategies that we've been talking about and you know, kind of doing it in the ways that we can right now, but really just blowing them up and amplifying them and doing them in a much larger way in the very near future.
That's tremendous. Thanks for that, Martin. So with all this, gentlemen, we're kind of coming up on time for the end of the podcast session recording here, but do appreciate you guys walking through all this stuff with us. It's fascinating. And like I said, I'm really looking forward to trying the products. For the audience here, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you guys if they're curious to learn more about your company and what you guys are up to?
Well, obviously for DealBox, but otherwise, our kind of main email is contact@impact-naturals.com. Otherwise, our individual emails are pretty simple. It's a first name at impact-naturals.com. So Vassili or Martin, we're always happy to talk to anybody. Any questions?
Yeah, and John, I'll just add to that. Email is great, and we're certainly, very responsive. And in addition to that, I would encourage people to, follow us on Instagram and reach out on Instagram. It's at Impact Naturals, just at Impact Naturals on Instagram, and we have an active presence there as well, and would respond that way if people were into it.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you guys for being so open for our audience to be able to communicate with you guys. That shows a lot of promise as executives for a company. Very much appreciated. Martin and Vassili, it's been a real pleasure having you guys on here today. So thank you for making the time. And for the audience out there listening, thank you for joining us for another episode of DealBox Daily. We will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Have a great day.